leading up to my first confession, I had these night terrors about being the nails in Jesus's hands. And I had a panic attack in the church as I was waiting for my first confession to start. I realized that, wait, I'm not the nail, my sin is the nail, and I'm about to be separated from my sin.
This is the Best of the Week on Relevant Radio.
I'm joined today on Trending by Anna Kate, who is known as the one who loved God late. According to her social media and Twitter, she's very active on social media. She has a pretty incredible story. She's only 31 years old, but she became engaged to another woman living a same-sex lifestyle who later became her wife and is now known as her ex-wife. We also are going to be diving into so much of her story, many parts that we can barely even scratch the surface on. But what's fascinating is that she also had the goal of becoming an Episcopal priest, actually. Joining me now is Anna Kate. Anna Kate, welcome to Trending.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Anna, we have such a hot button issue today that we tend to battle over in the culture war between Catholics and non-Catholics that centers around sexuality, everything from abortion and contraception to gender ideology and same-sex attraction. Well, I think much of the focus today has been on gender ideology. A very prevalent issue is same-sex attraction. Now, it's fascinating because you have an incredible story, and I know we're going to touch on parts of your story today, but also get into a lot of the, I guess you could say, apologetic response to people who are in favor of same-sex attraction, maybe have a family member, because you've been there. You've lived in that. You've lived in that outside of the church and have come into it. Let's start by sharing a little bit of your story, if you would.
Sure. I grew up in the Episcopal Church. I had a great love of the liturgy and the saints and of Mary and a lot of things that would set the stage for me later to become Catholic. I was going to be an Episcopal priest. I was told that I needed to get a college degree first because how their seminary works is you already have a 4-year degree and then you go off for 3 years for pastoral and theological training, basically. It's for seminary. And so I had to have that 4-year degree. I had started and not completed a degree many, many years ago. And I said, fine, what can I get a degree in that I would actually enjoy? And my priest at the time, my Episcopal priest at the time, said, well, there's a college right by Charlotte where you could attend our parish and go to college there. They have a wonderful theology department. I think you'd love it. And I said, cool, sign me up. And I had many, many conversations with my academic advisor, who is a wonderfully patient man, about various issues. And I began to go to Mass with his family the summer between my sophomore and junior year. My professor asked me, I had an advising appointment that happened to fall on Maundy Thursday, and he asked me what my plans were for Easter. And I said, well, I'm probably going to watch church online because this is 2021 we're talking about and the pandemic and churches weren't really open. And my church in Charlotte wasn't open, my Episcopal church. I said, well, I think I'm going to order a pizza and I'm going to watch my church's Mass. And then there's probably going to be some Netflix involved. And he said, I have a better idea. He's from Italy, so I knew he was a good cook. And he said, you're going to come to my house and you're going to eat Easter dinner with my family. And I know you're a vegetarian, but there's plenty of good Italian food that doesn't have meat in it. I'll cook for you. It'll be great. Hang out with me and my wife and our sons. And I was like, I heard the word food. And so I was in. And I said, sure, why not? I ended up spending most of the day there that day. And it became an all summer thing where I would come to their house and pretty much hang out all day. And somehow he realized that my parish was either closed or you had to have reservations or something that I didn't want to deal with was going on. And he said, well, just come to Mass with us at Queen of the Apostles. And I was like, sure, why not? I mean, I haven't been to church in a year. I kind of miss it. Mm-hmm. So I go to church with him. I love Queen of the Apostles. It's a very joyful, very, very friendly, welcoming place. And I love the music and I just love everyone there. And they have this gorgeous statue of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I've had a tattoo of the Virgin of Guadalupe for about 10 years now. And that statue is the first thing I noticed. So I start going to Mass with them. Then I hang out with them all day. Sometimes his wife would take the boys to the grocery store or to a neighbor's house, or they'd just be outside, and my professor and I would be inside, and we're about the same age. We got along very well. And sometimes I'd be like, hey, I want to ask you a theology question. And that was always well received. And one day the topic happened to be same-sex marriage. And I said, I want you to teach me what the Catholic Church teaches and why. And the way I had learned about same-sex marriage is pretty much the Episcopal stance on a lot of things.
Which is what?
Which is, if it might make someone sad, it's probably wrong.
Oh, interesting. So arbitrary. It's based on feelings.
Welcome is a big thing. Inclusion is a big thing. If we're going to hurt somebody's feelings, we're probably doing something wrong. Not a lot of talk about sin, not a lot of talk about natural law or things like that. And I don't think this was always the case. I think the Reformers created a thinking church, and it devolved into democracy and went from there. Yeah, so I was expecting to hear my position on same-sex marriage was very informed by, well, they're God's children. Jesus loved them. What I was taught is that Jesus is the outcast, is the oppressed, and is always on the side of the outcast and the oppressed. And those who are doing the casting out and the oppressing are on the side of the people who crucified him.
Which is a convenient theology, right?
Theology is a strong word, but yes. And so I talked to him, and so I expected to hear, feelings and that sort of thing from the other direction, and I would kind of decide which one made the most sense or felt the most right. And so he said, do you really want to do this right now? And I said, I think so. And
now, did he have any idea of your past at all, or was he suspect?
Oh, absolutely. He'd met my ex-wife. I mean, yeah, pretty much everybody at school knew. He knew I was an Episcopalian. He knew that my divorce had been finalized very recently. We were separated for 2 years and then got divorced. Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure he had met Megan at that point. Very, very kind to me. I had to come to him with this. It was not something that he was aggressive or kicked me out of his office or anything about,
He allowed this to unfold in your timing.
Yeah, and it was God's timing, really, but he needed me to show him that I was ready, because I understood the answer was no in the Catholic Church, but I needed to know more than just no.
So what did you take from his response? I've seen in some of your story that you were looking for the answer that seemed to feel the best.
Right,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
It was going to kind of be what felt, because, you're going to have feelings on the right and feelings on the left, and you go with the one that feels right, I guess. Mm-hmm. And for the reason I'm about to tell you, which is that there was not a single feeling or attack or judgment or anything that transpired between us. He sat me down, and I'd had a semester of Augustine and Aquinas with him at that point. So he knew I knew the basics of natural law. And he said, okay, well, this is what marriage is, and this is the meaning of marriage. This is the purpose of marriage. This is the marital act, and this is the purpose of the marital act. And I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, this makes sense. Since when does faith make sense? Because to be a bit more charitable toward my previous denomination, your faith was something that was very personal, and it's your business, and it's between you and God. Yeah, not even so much that. That's more evangelical, but it is something that's very private, and that what you believe doesn't have to line up with someone else believes. That's just for God to sort out. And you don't criticize someone else unless they're conservative, and they don't criticize you unless you're conservative. And we had this conversation, and at one point I just started crying, and he panicked a little bit because, he's got a sobbing girl sitting on his couch.
And he's a father of boys.
Yes, and a man. And his man brain sees a sobbing girl. No, he was actually very sweet. But he said, have I gone too far? Have I pushed you too far? Do you feel like I've been uncharitable or unkind? And I said, no, not at all. And he said, then what are you upset about? And I said, I'm upset because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong.
Wow.
And he said, well, asking these kinds of questions of yourself and questioning what you believe because what you believe should hold up to questioning, should hold up to being questioned. This is what the life of faith consists of. This is a beautiful thing. It's not something to be upset about, something to rejoice in. And I really took that to heart. You know, I was kind of scrambling at that point. I was like, I'm sure I can still be an Episcopalian and not believe in same-sex marriage. I just have to be quiet about it. If anybody asks me, I can be like, well, I was married to a woman. And I'm sure I can even maybe still be ordained with this, although Father Jacob's not going to be real happy with me. The diocese isn't going to be real happy with me. But
it was convenient for you to hold to many of their ideologies, right? To be living a same-sex lifestyle, to have a so-called wife, right? To be married.
Right.
Even many Catholics, like, oh, hey, you're Catholic and you're living this type of relationship and lifestyle. People like to celebrate that as if that's an endorsement of Catholicism, but actually it's the antithesis of.
Well, you know, something that I have said before and not been very popular for saying is, you know how they say you don't alter a Vera Wang dress to fit you, you alter yourself to fit the dress? Catholic moral teaching is like that.
That's great.
So after that conversation, I started questioning other things. I was already anti-trans logic. I was already very pro-life. There were some things I was already right about, usually for the wrong reasons, but that I was usually right about. You know, there were other questions I had to ask, but that was kind of the big domino. Like, that was the thing that was going to have to come down for me to be able to discern conversion. I didn't realize, my professor's wife claims she saw it coming from the day she met me. But I didn't realize I was discerning conversion until, well, let's say I found out last. I realized toward the end of the summer that I needed to email my priest back in Charlotte and say, hey, you know, I don't want to go further with this discernment process for right now. I need to take some time. I need to make sure I'm supposed to be an Episcopalian. So I'm going to go to Queen of the Apostles. I'm going to figure this out.
Wow.
And I'll let you know how it goes. And he was very sweet. I mean, God love Father Jacob and Mother Amanda. They were very sweet, very supportive.
He must have loved Catholics if he sent you to a Catholic school and trusted that you would be perfectly fine there, because people in the theological world know that once you study and engage with church teaching, especially the early church fathers, there's usually
it's to
conversion.
Cease to be Protestant. Yeah.
Right.
Someone at the church admitted to me that they figured it was probably 50-50 that they'd lose me.
Wow.
And so later that summer, I broke my ankle. I swear this is going somewhere. I was stuck in the hospital. My professor was stuck at home with his kids and couldn't come rescue me from the hospital. And so I called, and, you know, all my friends were home because it was the middle of the summer. Nobody was in Belmont. So I did what I knew to do, and I called campus ministry. And I said, Wesley, I'm stuck in the hospital. I need someone to come get me. Please come get me. And he said, Student Affairs has a big van. We'll come get you. And they got me, and they helped me get back up into my apartment because there's some relatively hateful stairs in between the ground and my apartment. And they helped me. And during that episode, I said, hey, Wesley, by the way, can you tell me about RCIA? As I'm sitting here in an ankle boot that weighs 50 pounds. Like,
Reminds me a little bit of St. Ignatius in a certain respect.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah. And he goes, yeah, so it'll start after Labor Day, and you're not obligated. You don't have to make your decision. We'd like you to know by the beginning of Lent which way you're going to go, because there's things like your first confession and the rite of acceptance and things you'll have to do. But you certainly do not have to know a year in advance. It's no commitment.
Beautiful.
You just come,
you're free.
Hang out. Sometimes we have snacks. It'll be great. And I said, okay, I think I want to do RCIA. Put me on the list. And so I went to RCIA. We quickly realized that a junior theology major didn't need to be in RCIA. So my theology professors got me out of it.
Excellent.
And
yeah.
The abbot's concession was that I would choose one of the abbey priests, the implication being that I still needed to study and prepare, but maybe one-on-one would be more at my pace. And I already had an existing good relationship with one of the abbey priests, Father Elias. He took me on, and we sat once a week, usually outside, and just chatted about the faith and the church and the sacraments and all these things. And I don't know, none of these realizations was as dramatic as realizing I was wrong about same-sex marriage. Like everything else pretty much fell into place.
It fell into place. So at what point during that year did you decide, okay, not only am I in RCIA, but I'm officially committed to becoming Catholic? And I assume you came into the church at that Easter Vigil, correct?
I did, 2022. When I came to a point where I'm being pulled in two directions that don't go together, what let me lay that at Jesus's feet was that professor and saying, well, if he knew the way forward, there's a way forward. My first confession, the thing that probably shouldn't be bragged about, but it took an hour. Leading up to my first confession, you know, I had these night terrors about being the nails in Jesus's hands. And I had a panic attack in the church as I was waiting for my first confession to start. And my godmother appeared out of nowhere, having canceled a class to come and sit with me. And we prayed a rosary together. And during that, I realized that, wait, I'm not the nail. My sin is the nail. And I'm about to be separated from my sin. And I think that's what played into a lot of my current conviction about being a person with same-sex attraction, because that whole hour was not sexual sin, but a lot of it was. That I am not my sin. Please don't call me by my sin. Like,
Amen.
The devil knows my name and calls me by my sin, but my Father in heaven knows my sin and calls me by my name.
Amen.
And that's why I won't accept a lot of those labels.